There is something powerful about the moment you decide to step back. When you remove yourself from a situation, from a relationship, from a dynamic where you were once overly available, you change the way people perceive you. Human nature is wired in such a way that we often take for granted what is always within reach. The things we see every day, the people who constantly give, the presence that is always there. These things become expected, and anything that is expected loses its perceived value. It is not because people are inherently ungrateful, but because familiarity can breed complacency. But when you step back, something shifts. The person who once ignored you, the one who dismissed you or made you feel like an afterthought, suddenly begins to take notice. It is not because they have changed overnight, but because the dynamic has changed. You see, when something is always accessible, it is not seen as valuable. But the moment it becomes scarce, its worth is reassessed. And this is why distance creates value. It forces people to recognize what they once overlooked. When you step back, you are not just removing your physical presence, you are removing your energy, your attention, your validation. And for someone who is used to receiving those things without effort, that absence begins to feel like a loss. But deep inside, the mind starts to shift. Avoidant people in particular function in a way that makes them resistant to closeness. They struggle with emotional intimacy, often pulling away when someone gets too close. But this does not mean they do not care. It means they fear the vulnerability that comes with connection. So when you were present, when you were giving, when you were always there, they may have subconsciously felt the need to withdraw. But the moment you step back, the script flips. Now they are the ones left with an unsettling silence. And that silence speaks volumes. You see, people crave what they cannot easily have. It is a law of attraction, a fundamental truth of human behavior. If you chase something, it runs. If you hold on too tightly, it slips away. But if you let go, if you allow space, it creates a vacuum. And nature abhors a vacuum. That empty space demands to be filled. At first, they may not recognize it. Days may pass, weeks may go by, and they may carry on as if nothing has changed. But then a moment of stillness comes, a quiet evening, a familiar place, a memory that resurfaces. And in that moment, they feel something they had not anticipated, a void, a realization, a longing. This is why stepping back is so powerful. It is not about manipulation. It is not about playing games. It is about shifting the energy in such a way that forces people to confront their own feelings. When you were always there, they never had to question what life would be like without you, but now they are faced with the reality of your absence. And absence has a way of making people see things clearly. Think about it. How many times have you only truly appreciated something after it was gone? How often do people regret their choices only when the door has already closed? It is because the human mind assigns value based on loss. The minute you step away, you transition from being taken for granted to being someone who must be earned. But here is the key. When they return, and they will return, you must not fall back into the same patterns that led to their complacency in the first place, because the cycle will repeat itself. They will feel the loss, they will reach out, and if you immediately make yourself available again without boundaries, the dynamic resets. They go back to taking you for granted. This is why distance is not just about creating value, it is about maintaining value. It is about teaching people how to treat you, about setting a standard for how you deserve to be respected. Because the truth is, the right people will not need your absence to appreciate you. The right people will recognize your worth while you are still present. So, if someone only values you after you walk away, let them learn the lesson. Do not rush back. Do not immediately fill the space you left behind, because if they truly care, they will put in the effort to meet you at the level you deserve. They will show, not just in words, but in consistent actions, that they see your value. And if they do not, let them go. Let them remain in the past where they belong. Because your worth does not decrease just because someone failed to recognize it the first time. If anything, your ability to step away, to stand firm in your self-respect, only makes you more powerful. Distance is not about playing games. It is about knowing when to stop forcing connections that are not serving you. It is about understanding that when you step back, you give people the opportunity to step up. And if they do not, you now have the clarity to move forward with those who truly see you for who you are. People with avoidant tendencies have a deep-rooted fear of intimacy. It is not that they do not care, nor is it that they are incapable of love. The reality is they have learned to associate closeness with discomfort, vulnerability with danger, and emotional depth with a loss of control. Their instinct is to pull away, to create distance, to protect themselves from what they perceive as a threat to their independence. But the irony is this: the very thing they run from is often the very thing they crave deep down. They may not express it, they may not even fully understand it, but their avoidance is not an absence of emotion, it is a reaction to it. When someone with avoidant tendencies is given consistent love, attention, and presence, they often take it for granted. Not because they are ungrateful, but because their mind tells them that closeness is overwhelming. They fear being needed too much, relied upon too heavily, or becoming so entangled in another person's emotions that they lose themselves in the process. So they withdraw, they push away, they create emotional walls to maintain a sense of control. But what they do not realize in the moment is that their actions carry consequences. When you are constantly present, pouring love, effort, and energy into an avoidant person, they do not feel the urgency to change. They do not feel the necessity to appreciate what they have because, to them, you are a constant. And human nature is such that we rarely see the full value of something that is always available. It is only when it is gone that we are forced to evaluate what it truly meant. This is why absence is such a powerful force. When you remove yourself, when you take your energy, your time, and your presence away, you shift the dynamic completely. The person who once felt comfortable keeping you at a distance is now confronted with the reality they did not anticipate, life without you. And that absence forces them to sit with emotions they have been avoiding. At first, they may not notice it. They may even feel relieved. Avoidance often mistakes space for freedom. And in the beginning, they might convince themselves that they made the right choice in keeping their walls up. They may go about their daily lives carrying on as if nothing has changed. But then something happens, a moment of stillness, a trigger, a memory. And in that moment, they begin to feel something they have been running from: loss. Because avoidance does not mean a lack of feelings, it means a fear of processing them. And when there is no longer a person there to push away, no longer a dynamic that allows them to maintain their emotional defenses, they are left with only themselves. They are forced to sit with the very emotions they were trying to escape. That absence becomes a mirror. It reflects back to them what they refused to acknowledge before, that they did care, that they did feel something, that the connection they tried to avoid was, in fact, something meaningful. They may not have been able to articulate it while you were present, but your absence makes it undeniable. And this is where the shift happens. The very person who once needed distance now starts to feel the weight of disconnection. The very person who once resisted intimacy now begins to crave the connection they pushed away. They start replaying moments in their mind, questioning why they did not appreciate what they had when it was right in front of them. This process does not happen overnight. Avoidants are wired to suppress their emotions, so it may take time. But gradually the realization sets in. They begin to recognize that the absence is not just space, it is a void. And voids demand to be filled. They start to wonder if they made a mistake. They start to crave the comfort, the presence, the certainty that you once provided. This is why avoidants often come back after no contact. It is not because they suddenly develop new emotions. It is because they are finally confronting the emotions that were there all along. The difference is that now, without you there to absorb their push-pull dynamic, they have to sit with those emotions alone. And it is in that solitude that they begin to realize just how much you meant to them. But here is the important part. When they return, you must remember why you walked away in the first place, because the cycle will repeat if nothing has changed. An avoidant person who returns out of fear of loss, but without having done the inner work to address their emotional barriers, will eventually resort back to their old ways. They will seek closeness for a moment, but once they feel safe again, they may start to withdraw once more. This is why you must not let their realization be enough. They must take action. They must show that they are willing to do the work, to communicate, to meet you at the level of emotional maturity that you deserve. If they truly value what they lost, they will not just express regret, they will take steps to ensure they do not lose you again. And if they do not, then let them go, because your worth is not determined by someone else's ability to recognize it. If they needed distance to see your value, then let that lesson be theirs to learn. Do not rush back into the same cycle of emotional unavailability. Do not allow someone to return only to repeat the same behaviors that pushed you away in the first place. Instead, use that time of separation for your own growth. Strengthen your boundaries. Develop your self-worth to the point where you no longer need someone to validate it. Understand that you are not just an option to be reconsidered when loneliness strikes. You are a person of value, deserving of consistent love, appreciation, and effort. Because the truth is, the right person will not need your absence to appreciate you. The right person will recognize your worth while you are still present. They will not run when things get emotionally deep. They will not push you away only to come back when they realize what they lost. They will cherish you while they have you, not just when you are gone. So, if an avoidant person returns, let them prove their change through action, not just words. And if they cannot, then let their absence become permanent. Because you deserve more than someone who only values you when you are no longer there. You deserve someone who sees your worth every single day. When you shift your focus from chasing validation to cultivating your own growth, something remarkable happens. You stop seeking approval from others, and instead, you begin to radiate a quiet confidence that is undeniable. This kind of confidence does not come from arrogance or the need to prove anything to anyone. It comes from knowing who you are, what you stand for, and what you bring to the table. And this kind of energy is magnetic. People are naturally drawn to those who exude self-sufficiency. When you are not constantly seeking attention, validation, or reassurance, you create a sense of mystery. You become intriguing, not because you are playing games, but because you are genuinely invested in yourself. You have things to do, goals to accomplish, and a life to build. That energy is powerful. It signals to the world that you are whole within yourself, that you do not need external affirmation to feel complete. The paradox is that when you stop needing attention, you start attracting it effortlessly. Why? Because people are naturally drawn to confidence. Confidence is not just about how you look or how you speak. It is about how you carry yourself, how you handle situations, how you respond to challenges. A person who is secure in themselves does not beg for love or attention. They do not chase people who are unsure about them. They do not lower their standards to accommodate those who do not value them. Instead, they set boundaries, they prioritize their peace, and they refuse to be involved in relationships that do not align with their worth. This kind of self-assuredness makes others sit up and take notice. The very people who may have taken you for granted before suddenly see you in a different light. They begin to wonder what changed. They start to question why you are no longer accessible in the way you once were. And in that questioning, they start to feel your absence. They start to crave the energy that you once poured into them. It is not that you are intentionally trying to make anyone miss you. It is simply the natural effect of shifting your focus. When you detach from situations that drain you, when you stop overextending yourself for people who do not reciprocate, you free up space for your own growth. You start to pour into yourself the way you once poured into others. You invest in your own goals, your own happiness, and your own well-being. And in doing so, you create a version of yourself that is more powerful than ever. There is an undeniable appeal to someone who is self-sufficient. It is the kind of appeal that cannot be faked. It comes from doing the inner work, from knowing your worth, from understanding that you do not need to prove your value to anyone. When you operate from this mindset, you naturally command respect. You no longer entertain relationships that are based on inconsistency. You no longer tolerate half-hearted efforts. You no longer cling to people who are unsure about you. Instead, you move with purpose. You set standards and you do not lower them. You understand that the right people, the people who truly value you, will meet you where you are. They will not require you to shrink yourself, to compromise your needs, or to prove your worth over and over again. They will see you, appreciate you, and show up for you in the way that you deserve. This is the power of detachment. It is not about being cold or unfeeling. It is about recognizing where your energy is best spent. It is about understanding that your worth is not dependent on someone else's ability to see it. It is about stepping into your power and knowing that the more you invest in yourself, the more you naturally attract people who respect and admire that strength. And this is what makes you even more attractive, not just in a physical sense, but in a deeper, more meaningful way. People can feel when someone is whole within themselves. They can sense when someone is not looking for external validation to feel complete. And that kind of energy is irresistible. It commands attention without demanding it. It creates a gravitational pull that makes others want to be around you, to understand you, to connect with you on a deeper level. This is why focusing on your own growth is the best thing you can do, not just for your own well-being, but for the energy you bring into the world. The more you elevate yourself, the more you elevate the kind of people who are drawn to you. You shift from attracting those who only want to take from you to attracting those who want to build with you. So do not be afraid to detach. Do not be afraid to walk away from anything that does not align with your growth. Do not be afraid to invest in yourself fully, to become so deeply focused on your purpose that anything that is not meant for you naturally fades away, because in doing so, you become the kind of person who does not just attract attention, you attract respect, admiration, and the right kind of love. And that is far more valuable than anything you could ever chase.